Welcome to Norse Talk, information of the gods. I am Red Bearded Viking. This is Red Dranger, and tonight, you guys, we are going to be going over Chapter 8 of the Asatru by Patricia Lafayllve, Concepts of Time. For everybody that's just joining us, please go check out our YouTube page, like us, comment, and follow us there. Links are in the Beacons page. Also, there's a link for the books through Amazon. This one and the book that we're getting ready to do. And as always, guys, follow us on our Instagrams and our Discords and help out with support with those top 3 support pages and check out that merch store and get your Norse Talk merch today, you guys. So, Red, we're ready to start chapter 8, man. Um,
Yeah,
what did
we're
you think
cruising.
of this chapter?
This was a really interesting chapter. The theories are starting to make a lot more sense. Like a lot of the theories that she touched on at the beginning of the book are starting to kind of, you're getting more of a look at them and how that they work in the rest of the mythology. Um, this is a great chapter in regards of just how they look at time and the differences between how modern society views time and how the Norse pagan community looked at time was really interesting.
Right, right. Like I like the quote that she wrote at the top of this page that says, "When things happen, or when things happen, isn't important as how things happen."
Yeah.
So it's not when they happen, but how they happen that's more important. And that's when we start to get into a little bit of theology in the beginning of this chapter, you guys. Um, when it talks about how when language evolves over time, um, just like everything else, but in the Germanic language, we see something fascinating. Grammatically speaking, there is no future tense. They have a past tense and they have a present tense, but we have to construct a future tense out of the past tense. So when they were looking back, there was no word back then that had to do with future tense because they didn't ever talk about the future because the future was made up of what happens today. And it also goes in to say it has led some scholars to assume that for Germanic speaking peoples, the concept of future did not exist. There was a sense of the future, but it was directly influenced by permanence of the past and the fluidity of the present. And this attitude led to what early researchers called the Viking Fatalism. And it talks about how the Havamal itself advises that a person might as well get a good night's sleep because there's nothing you can do about the future. And it gives a quote actually out of the Havamal that says, "The foolish man lies awake all night and worries about things. He's tired out when the morning comes, and everything's just as bad as it was." You know, so it's basically saying whether you stay up all night or not to worry about things that are bothering you, it's not going to change those things. Those things are still going to be there when you wake up. So sitting there and all you're going to do is you're going to be tired the next day when you go to face these things that are already going to be there. You can't change the fact that they're there. So you might as well get a good night's sleep and face it the next day when the next day comes. You know, and then it also talks about what we do now is up to us, and it will change the outcome of our lives. Free will and fate do not go hand in hand. Generally, a person either has free will and can do anything, or is fated to live and die in a certain way. And it talks about people that think about it has to be one way or the other is a bad combination. But the reality of it is we all have an infinite number of decisions, and the actions we take in any given situation, we choose between those decisions and actions that we are in the moment. And basically, what this part of the chapter is saying here in the beginning, when it's talking about the theological aspect of it, guys, if you look at it from the point of view of being a child. When you're a child, the where you can go is infinite. You can be anything you want to be. Like the skies are the limit, you know. And as you gradually start getting older, you start narrowing your focus. You start figuring out as you get into your preteen and teen years, you start figuring out where you want that focus to be. The aspects in life that you really are starting to drive yourself towards wanting to become. And it's making that decision from being a child and having all those infinite decisions of being anything you want to starting to narrow it down. That's a decision that you made and starts to form your life and change the direction of your life. Because now you went from having an infinite number of places to go and be to you've narrowed it down to probably maybe 15, 20, or maybe some people even more. And then as you continue to age and you continue to make those decisions of where you're going to put your focus and where you want to go when it comes to you're getting ready to graduate high school and you're making the decision, okay, am I going to go to college? Am I going to go directly into the workforce? Am I going to go into the military? You know, so now you're narrowing down that decision to which direction you're going to go. So now, as you pick one of those directions, now your decisions narrow even more. So at this point, your future could have gone any direction. And in that moment, when you make those choices, it directs where your future is going. So you constantly, when you're living in the moment, every decision that you have made in your past has formed you to be where you are today. And it's by being faced with those decisions and the decision that you made, the decision that you chose, that puts you on the path to where you are right now and can put you on the path to where you're going to be in the future. One of the big things that the book does talk about is a lot of people um, are focused so much on the future, and your future is not clearly determined. Your future is determined by those decisions you make today. Because if you decide you're going to go left instead of right and you get into an accident, that could change your life. You know, it's every decision that you make. And your future is never set in stone. So it's better to live in the now and focus on each decision as it comes and think about those decisions instead of worrying so much about the future, because you're never going to achieve the future you want if you're not making the decisions today to drive you towards that future. So you got to make sure that you're focusing on each decision in the moment, because once you've made that decision, it's now your past. And once it's your past, you can't change it. It's already been decided. So your past is set in stone. Your future is what you make of it by the decisions you make in the present. So that leads us into, I'm going to turn this part over to Dranger. That leads us into the bottom of page 108 when we start getting into the Norse aspect of it.
So when it comes to time and Norse mythology, there's, and Randy segued to it really perfectly there. Modernly, we spend a lot of time looking forward. So when we think of things like fate and destiny and stuff like that, we're always casting forward. Where with a lot of the Norse, your fate was decided before it happened. They would look at it based on the past, based on what decisions and what things you have done that have locked your life in the way that it's going to be. Um, so that leads us into an introduction into the three fates, and they begin by talking about the three principal wells. We have talked about Mimir a little bit, that being the well that Odin traded his eye for. There are also Adur and the other word I have a hard time kind of pronouncing, Hivglimir. These are the three principal wells, and it's important to remember this because it leads us into our first of the Norns, who again shares the same name, Udur. This part I am going to read fairly verbatim because I don't want to uh, skip over anything that's going to be kind of important for you guys here. So it talks briefly about Yggdrasil and the World Tree, and we talked briefly about the Norn's involvement with the World Tree, again nourishing it with the water and the white mud of the one well, and that well was Udir. Um, that that well and that Norn are specifically associated with the past. Um, and again, that gives us our first kind of look at where the principal focus is on this. Again, it's not a cast out to the future, it's starting in the past. Um, at this part, our ancestors named both the Norn and the well Dur speaks to the importance of the past in the heathen worldview. Weird is a pattern of individual existence, and the pattern of all existence, the well of word, then is a respiratory of all things past. The Norns feed Yggdrasil the white mud, which itself made from the water of that well. In this sense, we can say that Yggdrasil, the world tree, the Axis Mundi, exists on its own and at the same time is dependent on nourishment it receives from the past. So again, with Yggdrasil being the primary focal point of pretty much modern, I don't want to say creationism, but the realms exist within the tree. The tree's roots to the top, it is engraved in Norse mythology, and it itself is, though it exists outside of the temporal, it is fed and nourished with the past, and that is an important statement to remember when we're looking at some of the more theological thoughts that are going to be coming towards the end of this chapter. Taking time into concepts, we can better understand the present, Verdani becoming, Verdani, which means becoming. Is the norm more concerned with the present? In the heathen worldview, the present is what can be changed. That's another important statement there. The present occurs as a permanent state of becoming, a lineal space between the past and future. It may seem as though heathens believe the present is in a constant state of flux, and in many ways this is absolutely true. The present acts every moment of every day. Action is key. The present tense is the attractive tense, and the present moment in the heathen's worldview is one of right action. Every circumstance, a heathen strives to do the right thing in the moment. And that, again, ties back to how the choices you make in the moment can define your future. So if you're not making decisions in the moment that you feel are right and or just or honorable, that is the dice that you're casting on that future. We also need to remember that even non-action is an action. The present is made out of the entire moment. What is said or unsaid, witnessed or solitary between the person and the environment he is standing in. This present happens, and it is everything. Again, this is a really interesting concept because it is very different from modern thinking. Again, we are looking at the past and thinking of the moment instead of, I think modernly we get stuck in wishing for the future instead of acting in the moment. And then this chapter has been really good at kind of forcing us to all stop for a minute and look at it in a bit of a different way. And with the information that we received from the last chapter being a key way to kind of get into this. I think that's why that exercise in the last chapter was so important.
Right, and I like how it then goes into the theoretical aspect of it, where it talks about we could argue all or nothing might happen in the moment just between the past and present action. So
Yeah,
in between, because every time you make that decision, it goes from being present to past. So when you make that decision in that moment, it's either all or nothing. Once you've made it, it's done. Like you can't
yeah,
unmake it. And then um, at first blush, the opportunities seem infinite. However, our choices do have limits. The permanence of the past directly influences and limits the action of the present. So, and that's what I was talking about earlier, where your decisions that you make, as soon as they become past, now that because your past is what forms to drive you to where you're going, because every decision you made becomes past, but that's how you got on the path to where you're going. So that's where that's what they're talking about when they're talking about the past directly influences and limits the actions of the present. Because now that's the past, and your new present is limited because you made that decision.
Yep.
Let's see. It goes on to say, you are the actor, the precipitator of your own life and your own present. You can, in point of fact, choose your present for yourself. However, you are limited in the choices, and the limitations come directly from your own past. And then we start going back into the year log limits everything part, which I'm going to let Red go over.
Yeah, so we talked about the year log, and again, when we talk about the year log and the weird, again, we're talking about the base of the tapestry compared to what is being sewn in. I don't want to get too much into the year log again because that's going to lead us back into the last chapter. If you didn't get to see that last chapter, please go back and watch the video because it will make a lot of this make a little bit more sense to you. So it again kind of talks about the present being in constant flux. It is going to be changed by the decisions you made. And Redbeard just again he analyzed that really correctly. And this leads us into the last of our three Norns. And before they describe her again, they want to make sure that it's understood that when we're talking about the language and the way that the Germanic language was written, there was no future tense. So there wasn't just a word that defined the future. To talk about the future, you had to add things to present tense speech. So again, that shows that even just in language, they looked at it as the present casts the future. What you add to even just the language defines how you're speaking of the future. And therefore, if that was their theology in language, it would make sense that that would be their theology in life, because otherwise it would have made sense for them to make language that showed that. And I know that seems kind of like a sticky point, but it is important to remember that societies, they create language based on how they live, based on describing to each other and communicating each other what's important to them. The fact that you had to add words to present tense to talk about the future is really important. In Heathen, we just talked about that. So this leads us into the third Norn, Skald. This translates into will become and is the Norn most influencing the future, such as it is. Many modern heathens speculate Skald is the youngest of the Norns, and Adur the oldest. This is a modern time flipped on its head. So I'm going to pause there, and I thought that, to me, this was the part in the chapter that kind of smacked me in the face the most, is when you think about the modern way of looking at things, and I'm going to use a stupid Christian story. You look at, what was that Christmas movie with the ghosts? Scrooge or whatever his bloody name is.
Christmas story.
Yeah, Christmas Carol or whatever the hell it is. When they talk about the past, that spirit is young, has all that potential. It's the innocent one, and modern ways of thinking do tend to go back at the past and sugarcoat things and try to change how that looks. It's kind of a fallacy. The past is the past. You are stuck with the consequences of that. That's where this kind of flips it on its edge, is because they look at Skald as being the youngest of the Norns. So the least amount of experience, the least amount of time around, because again, Skald is future. Skald isn't fully shaped. And it makes more linear sense that way, but it really hit me, and I had to do a lot of thinking about it to get my mind out of that old way of thinking, where the way we look to the past and the way we look to the future are very, very different. One pagan philosophy sees the goddess an archetypal. In this philosophy, the goddess exists in three archetypes: a maiden, a mother, and a crone. The maiden is useful, full of promise, and much like the dawn of the day, while the crone represents the age of all things, the darkest points of the night, and the wisdom that comes from the end of life. The heathen worldview is the opposite. There are no tripartite goddess figures. Heathens believe that they come from the past and look towards the past as a source of information and wisdom. Their lives in many ways are lived backwards, and the permanence of the past is created the present moment. A fantastic worldview suggests that the future is fixed, we cannot change it, and the heathen worldview is that only the past is permanent, and that the future is entirely determined by one's past. And again, by one's past, it doesn't mean looking all the way back to the beginning. It means it's determined by the past you create. When you make a decision that can't be changed, that becomes part of your past. That becomes part of your path that's behind you, and it will influence how you travel down it going forward.
Right. Now, that also doesn't mean that, because you make a decision, you can't turn around and stop there and go and make the other decision. But
Yes.
regardless, you had already once made that decision, so it at least wavered your path for a minute.
Yeah. It's a part of your story. It's
Yep.
unchangeable. It makes me think of that modern saying. You see it a lot with a lot of the political stuff that's going on, where everybody's talking about actions having consequences and actions having consequences. And it is very true. And it's an interesting term to look at through this theology as well.
And then it goes in to talk about the fact that all the futures can ever be to the heathen's worldview are a set of most likely outcomes. So you have a set of most likely outcomes, and a heathen is very much centered on the present moment, the here and the now, and no one knows his or her precise moment of death. And the heathen worldview is not concerned about that moment. Heathens do not focus on the afterlife because there is not a thing they can do about that. Heathens don't even know what will happen tomorrow, really. As we've seen, the Havamal advises its readers not to worry about such things. What heathens can do is use the past and the present to alter the future in a pragmatic way. Let's say a person wants to be a doctor when they grow up. There are certain steps which occur every time you cross an educational milestone: graduation, undergrad studies, internships, and so on. You get that much closer to becoming a doctor. The events in the past are all those milestones that bring you closer to the desired future. But yet there's still no guarantee, however. Any number of things might lead a person to give up their chosen career for another one, which is what we were kind of talking about in the beginning. Um, we speak in terms of most likely outcomes. If we do the work, we need to do it here and now in the present. We develop layers of the past, which will make our desired future more likely to occur. Doesn't mean it will occur, but it's more likely if we're taking those steps to make it happen. But it may not happen because we may halfway through change our mind and decide to go a whole other path. So if we want an outcome, we can only work for it here and now. Present action will shape the permanent record of the past in our lives, which in turn shapes our futures. And this chapter really made me think, because I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. I'm so concerned about the future that I'm trying to live in the future and not living in the moment. And a lot of times, because you're not as focused on what's going on in the present, you tend to miss opportunities. you tend to make decisions hastily that you regret. You know, if we stop worrying so much about tomorrow and focus on today and what we can do today to lead us to where we want to be tomorrow. By we already know where we want to go. So quit worrying about that. Instead, focus on the decisions you're making every day in that moment. And when you think about that decision, go, okay, is this going to push me towards where I want to go? Or is this going to slow me down? Or is it just time to change directions? You know, start focusing on the now because the future is always going to be there and it's always going to be changing. But once you make that decision and it hits the past, you either got to reconstruct the new decision or follow on the path of the decision that you made. So make sure you're focusing on those important decisions that you're making and not making them hastily and just live in the now. Stop worrying so much. That's what I got out of this chapter. I really
Yeah,
liked it because it really made
act.
me think about my everyday life.
Yeah, act in each moment with the authority and the outlook of what you want your future to be, because that's the only way to build it. Um, I mean, you can sit around and this is a statement that comes with a lot of different agencies, but um, I think back to the best laid plans mean jack shit on first encounter with an enemy, and that's true at life as well. You can plan out and sit there and write out and note take on what you want your life to look like, and a decision you make tomorrow, if you're not thinking, could take that away from you. It could change that drastically. So it's just a way of, again, looking at how you sow your past into your path will affect its final outcome, and making sure that when you are in the moment, you're thinking and acting in a way that you want to, and not just being reactive. And that's another thing that we see so much of now with such ease to communication and ease to everything else, is we really don't think about the consequences of the moment. It's often done out of convenience or all the other bounds that we have to modern lives. And it's important to take a minute and think to yourself, is this what I'm doing right now where I want to be headed? And if it's not, what can I do to change that? Because I can't go back and change the path I've already walked.
Yeah, so it's really about focusing on today, you guys, and focusing on your decisions as they come. Now, I know last episode when we were on chapter 7, we went ahead and we did that exercise at the end of the chapter, and that went really well. People really liked that, and we had a lot of discussion about that when we hit the Q&A and everything. So there is one at the end of this chapter as well that I want to go over with everybody. So I'm going to read this part verbatim, you guys. This is another exercise, and it's something to just consider, you guys. So this one's called considering time. So it is a it is difficult to create a single ritual incorporated with the whole of time. The following is more of an exercise. It can be done meditatively or literally using pen and paper. At the end of the preceding chapter, we spoke of ways in which one can center ourselves with word and yuruk. This is a similar exercise that can be done in a couple different ways. One, trace an action in your past to its impact on your present. This can be a positive or negative act, it's your choice. I recommend beginning with something positive because it will be less fraught with emotions than a negative action. Write the action down. Give it all the detail you can recall, the act itself, what brought the action about, how you felt and perceived the action, and what consequences came from it. Now look to your present. How did that action change you? What are you now that you were not before the action happened? Two, now take a look at your present situation. Again, be as detailed as possible. Include your mood in the moment, specifics about your work, vocation, living situation, spirituality, and health. Choose one of these items and consider it in the terms of your future. How is your present moment impacting your future choices? Keep your future choices as broad as possible, but notice the limitations your present is also placing on your future. As a simplistic example, perhaps you have a cold right now. You feel awful. You're sneezing, coughing, nauseous, what uh, what have you. Write all the symptoms down on your paper. What are some of the future actions you may take based on the present situation of having a cold? Buying tissues, clear liquids, chicken soup involves a trip to the grocery store. That is one potential future. Or you can stay home and wait it out. That is a second potential future. However, going to work tomorrow may not be a potential future at all if you are sick enough. Going skydiving may also be out, thus eliminating another, perhaps more extreme future. Look at what is possible and what is not. The possibilities are not endless, but they can provide a sense of what the future is going to be. And I love the example that they gave with the cold, and
Yeah.
going into as far as going to work, but also, you know, if you're sneezing, runny nose, feeling like crap, chances are you're not going to go skydiving.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you were never going to go skydiving anyway, but you're for sure probably not going to go if you're feeling like that.
Yeah, it keeps you thinking about what is real. I mean, like if you're that person that's planning your future by going, well, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens, or this is my plan, but I'm not gonna do anything to do that. Like if you want to be a heavy mechanic and you're just like, well, it's just gonna happen for me one day. I'm not gonna go to school. I'm not gonna go to. It's not gonna happen. You got to be working in the present. You got to be making those decisions to open that future up to yourself, right? It's you're constantly sewing your experience into that tapestry that we talked about. And if you have an idea of where you want your path to go, but you are not sewing in the actions to get it there, it's not going to get there. It's like it would be like Randy saying that he's going to win a slam dunk contest. It's
Right? Only if I got a trampoline.
only if he's got a trampoline, right? So he'd have to make that decision. The
See, and that's
reality
the
of
decision I'd have to make. I need a
yeah.
trampoline if I'm going to compete.
I know that that's kind of a simplistic way of looking at it, but it is what it is. Um, Again, getting into talking about the Norns, guys, this is a topic that I could go on and on about. I'm trying not to because there's still lots of the book left to come, and my opinions differ slightly from the book, so I don't want to muddy the waters too much.
Right. No, but it's a great chapter to really, I mean, the last, and it ties in really well with the previous chapter. I think it helped, for me at least, chapter 7 to make a little bit more sense. Because
Yeah.
a lot of us agreed chapter 7 was a little confusing. We had to read it multiple times. And each time we read it, we got something a little bit different out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very kind of here or there chapter where you could go any direction with it.
Yeah.
I think after reading this chapter, it gave a little bit more clarity to the previous chapter.
Yeah. The,
But I
the
also
last.
think the
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, bud.
I also think the exercise at the end of last chapter goes along really well with the
Yeah.
exercise at the end of this chapter.
Exactly. Yeah. So far, the book has done a really great job at slowly introducing us to different theories and stuff. And in the last chapter was the first time where it actually asked you to sit and look at something from a different theological point of view than what most of us are used to thinking thinking about things in a different way, looking at the past differently, looking about the future, looking about, I mean, again, still, it's for most of us, if we talk about fate and free will, they're seen as a very much black and white, where according to the Norse mythology, that's not really the case. Both can be interwoven. And that is a very different way of thinking compared to what a lot of us are used to. So going into this chapter with that little bit of experience, especially if you did have a chance to sit down and do the exercise, was it gave you a really good foundation to kind of take that next step into deeper waters here, and it was helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So, guys, next week we will be next week
Yeah.
on Monday we'll be going over chapter 9. You guys, um, for those of you that are on YouTube with us right now, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, give us some comments. Also, you guys, uh, give us a follow on our Instagram and our Discord. Links are in the beacons, along with checking out that merch store, you guys, and those Amazon sites for the books. And another thing that we were talking about earlier, you guys, in our Discord, we have created a page called Secret Santa. So what we want to do is we want everybody to jump in that wants to be part of this. Put your name in the Discord for the Secret Santa, and what we're going to do is I'm going to use a random name generator and assign names to each person. And if you get that person's name, I want you guys to make a video for that person. So that person's not going to know who they're getting a video from. Both myself and Red are going to be in there as well. So somebody's going to actually, I think me and Red will put two in there. We'll put one in for our main and one for our backups.
Yeah. Okay.
So you guys will get a chance for two videos from each of us to four different people, you guys. And
Yeah.
what we'll do is on the 24th, just for a happy holidays thing, if you got that person's name, make them a video, release it on the 24th, and it'll just be something fun that we can all do and be involved in and get to know some new people and do
Yeah.
something special for somebody around the holidays.
So you'll get a video dedicated. Um, so if Rock and Wheelie, if his name is drawn for me, he's going to get a video on one of my accounts that's dedicated to him. That's going to be filmed for him. Um, that being said, guys, do not enter the contest if you're not willing to actually do. If you're not a recorder or a content maker, that's fine. That's totally respectful. But if you enter the contest, you got to be ready to do a video for somebody.
Yeah, so we'll keep talking about that between now and the 24th, you guys. I will probably around the 15th. I will get that name generator done, and I will sign everybody the person that they got to do a video for, and then
Yeah.
you guys will have from the 15th till the 24th, release it on the 24th, and that'll help support each other's pages, get each other out there a little bit, and just something fun for the holidays, you guys.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else tonight, Red?
I did. I don't remember what it was. Oh, yes. Guys, if you haven't already done so, please think about ordering your copy of the Study Hop Mall. I know it's already December. We are going to be through this book midway through January. If you want to follow along with the next one, please remember jump on there, order your copy, because we don't want to lead into this book because the Study Hop-O-Mal is going to be a very different kind of show because it is a journaling book. We are going to be able to be making notes and discussing different ways verses are being heard, absorbed, or put into real life. So it is going to be a very interactive book when we get to that point. So please, if you want to participate, the link is on Redbeard's Beacons. It will take you right to Amazon. It'll show you the exact book that we're doing next. Please think about jumping over there and getting one. We will be ordering some and doing a few raffles and a few giveaways with some of those books as well. If you are somebody in the community that really, really wants to participate but is struggling, please let us know. There are members of the community in here that are already looking at putting some copies of those books together to get out to the community members that can't really afford it. So please jump on the Discord. Let us know. If you're having any trouble finding the links, let us know so that we can all be ready when we lead into this one because the Havamal is it's one of the bigger books. There's going to be a lot of discussion. There's going to be a lot of note taking. and it might end up being a book that you're going to want to keep for a long time, with as many different opinions and different theologies that everybody involved in this great community is going to be able to dump into that through the question and answer periods and such. So please get your copy as soon as possible.
And also, you guys, make sure you're hitting that merch store. Um, the current shirts that we have on there will only be available until we are finished with this book. Once we start the study Havamal, we will have a different shirt
Yeah.
because we're going to do different shirts with each book to coincide with the books. So there will be a different shirt every time a new book comes out. So about mid-January, the current merch that is on the merch store will no longer be available in that color. It'll switch colors. Something else exciting, you guys, when we do finish this chapter, me and Red are both ordering our shirts for this book right now in the near future. But when this book is done, me and Red will be doing 2 raffles, and we will be raffling off our personal T-shirts that we wore during the show, and we will be raffling off with that T-shirt our personal copy of the book that we did with all of our notes, all of our highlights, and everything in it. So you'll have 2 chances because we're each going to raffle one off, you guys, at the end of the book, and we're going to do that at the end of every book, you guys. So you guys will always have a chance to get our personal book and our T-shirt from the show, and we will do that for every book. Other than that, you guys, that's all I've got for tonight. We're getting ready to jump over into. We will wash them before we send them out. We're getting ready to jump over
That
into
was
the
the
Q&A
opposite
section.
comments I just had. I just had comments saying they had better smell like beard.
Nice. But other than that, we're gonna wrap it up, you guys. We're gonna jump into the Q&A section. So, as always, guys, this is a we thing. It's not a me thing or a him thing. We couldn't do it without each and every one of you. And as always, guys, stay amazing, creating, and be awesome. We love you guys, and we'll see you in the next show.